Okay.
Hello and welcome to Are You Psychic? Here at Shaman's Dream Gifts in the Fox Run Mall in Newington, New Hampshire. My name is Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, and we're going to have psychic abilities tonight. And I did this talk about 3 months ago here, and we actually sold out the 7, created an 8, sold out the 8, and created a 9. So I decided that I would run it again, because I know that there were some people that missed it. So every one of my talks that like this kind are so different. Some of those people from 3 months ago could be sitting here and go, "You didn't say that last time." But it's worth coming back. I like to start a little bit about my own psychic history, because when we talk about psychic abilities, I have this principle which basically says that if somebody is going to talk about something, I want to know how knowledgeable they are. You know, if you wanted to go get your, poodle clipped, or you wanted to hear about how to, groom your poodle, and the person that wrote the book and doing the talk was allergic to poodles and had never been in the same room with one, you might go, I don't know that they're going to be the best source of information, right? So if you're going to talk about psychic abilities, you want to know, well, how come this person knows about psychic abilities, or are they just, another one of those psychotics that are running around pretending to be psychic? That happens all the time. So my first experience with psychic abilities, consciously, was when I was 4. That's when my grandmother first talked to me about psychic abilities. We played a game, and she was taking care of me. I was 4, almost 5, and I told her what she looked like when she was my age, how she wore her hair, the song that she sang when she used to sing with her best friend, and the name of her best friend. And it was all true. And she sat down and she said, "Kevin, you have a gift, and it's a gift from God. But people will tell you that it's bad, or that it's wrong, or they don't believe you. As long as you know it's a gift from God, everything will be okay." So that was kind of my introduction of some knowledge that there was something about me that was probably going to get me in trouble. There was something there. And the funny thing is that, being, like I said, 4, almost 5, I was kind of, okay, you're telling me something, okay, but she wanted to make sure that I really knew that it was good. So what she did is, she gave me not 1, but 2 hot homemade chocolate donuts with my own plate of sugar to reward me. Well, it took me a long time to figure out why she said what she said, but I always remembered it because I was so fond of those 2 hot homemade chocolate donuts and my own plate of sugar that I've carried them right to this day. I got 1 here and 1 here. Oh.
You're breaking the store down, dear.
Intro
So
psychic healing.
So I had a fairly psychic childhood. The house I lived in was haunted. My grandmother came to visit me when she died at the edge of my bed, told me that she was, that she had died, that she had passed on, but that I still needed her, so she'd still be there for me. When my mother came in to tell me the next morning that my grandmother had died, she was crying, and I'm sitting there, and I remember very clearly sitting there in bed and looking at her and going, "Okay, what's for breakfast?" And I know that my mother was looking at me going, "He doesn't understand death, he doesn't get it." And I remember clearly laying there going, "Mommy doesn't get it, Grimmy hasn't gone anywhere." Because she just told me. So she was still here. I mean, I understood I wasn't gonna get any more hot homemade chocolate donuts from her, and that was really sad. But I got that she also wasn't really gone. She was there. So from those experiences, by the time I was 15, I had started working at a bank. And I had this woman that at the bank who just became very fascinated with me. And during the summer, when I would work, we would have lunch together. And she was very interesting. And she looked at my palm, and she asked me my birth date and time, and she asked me some questions. And then she said, "You're here to be a worldwide spiritual leader. And I want to be known as one of the first people that work with you." And so, and I was like, okay. And, and I thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know about that worldwide spiritual leader thing. they get crucified, they get burned, they get stoned, I'm thinking president of the bank might be a better bet. But she convinced me to go to her weekly meetings, more or less, that she did. Now, this is in the 70s. And she had room in her house that was floor-to-ceiling bookcases of every spiritual and metaphysical book she could get her hands on. And she had a group of people that met every week to talk about everything from Atlantis and Lemuria and Edgar Cayce and you name it. I mean, like, there was just these conversations with all these people. And I, by far, was the youngest person in the room. But I went because she fed me. So, you notice this theme? There's a food theme here. Sometimes people go, I think I want to work with you, but I'm not sure. I'd like to chat with you a little bit more, or whatever. And I'm like, well, working with me is kind of sort of like chatting. I'll tell you what, you can chat with me if you take me to dinner, and then you can decide if you want. So anyways, so I did that, and it's when I first came across the fact that I really had this ability, without realizing it, of things falling out of my mouth. And I don't mean while I was eating. And kind of, so every week we would be doing different things. And she'd give me books to read, so I'd be ready to talk about it. Well, I was 15, 16, I had a girlfriend, I worked at the bank, I was in high school. How many of those books do you think I actually read?
None.
None. But one week she caught me out because she started talking about Atlantis. And I closed my eyes and I started describing Atlantis. And I described what it was like, and I described the feelings, and I described what I saw. And I was just so sad, and tears were rolling down my face. And I opened my eyes, and everybody's looking at me. And she goes, wow, you definitely said some of the same stuff. Definitely you read the Cayce book on Atlantis and this and that. And I looked at her, and I was like, what was Atlantis? And she goes, didn't you read the book? And I went, She goes, have you read any of the books? And I went, she goes, we just bring up the topic and you start talking about it. And she gave me what I call my first metaphysical nickname. I've gotten a lot through the years. I've been called Hurricane Kevin, I've been called the Psychic Sledgehammer, I've been called the Tank. But she gave me my very first, what I consider spiritual metaphysical nickname. You little shit. And so, and I said, well, Fran, I put him on my, I put him beside my bed at night, and if I have energy, I read them, but, and that's the first time anyone ever compared me to Edgar Cayce. I don't know if you're familiar with the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment. He was called the Sleeping Prophet. He did over 10,000 prophecies. There's a whole library in Virginia Beach, Virginia about his prophecies. And one of the things he did is, as a kid, he would put his school books under his pillow and he'd sleep on them, and he'd be able to go pass the test the next day. His are the most recorded prophecies in history, and have something like everything that he said that he saw as the sleeping prophet, about 90% of it has come to pass. And the other 10% is yet to be. I mean, scarily high. I mean, he's missed a few things, but we're going to get to that in a minute when we talk about psychic abilities. So from that was kind of, and through that group, I got my first invitation to work as a professional psychic. So 16, 17, I'm working as a professional psychic. I'm getting paid to sit there and open my mouth, let things fall out. I mean, I sometimes people have said to me, well, do you feel like, you took, were you qualified to take people's money? I'm like, as qualified as any politician. They open their mouth, things fall out, we pay them. At least my stuff was more true, more accurate, and it came true more often. So that's where my psychic history started. And I mean, that's a little bit of a capsule of my psychic history. I did psychic work, as well as worked at the bank, as well as I actually did a little theater, did a little modeling, was a professional dancer, anything to raise money to go to college. And then I went to college to become a real person, because that's what you were supposed to do. Go to college and become a real person. You remember those days?
I'm doing it right now.
You're doing that right now, see? And you know, one of the things is that you go to college to become a real person, to find out that on the other side of it, that you were a real person all along and now you just have real debt. So that's a little bit of the background. I like to let people know I've been doing this my whole life. I found out when I was in my 30s that my grandmother that talked to me actually had been a premier medium at the largest spiritualist camp in the country when she was 16. That I had aunts that had been used for psychic research studies for Harvard. That the state of Maine police had consulted a couple of times one of my aunts for psychic abilities. One did ghost clearings. I had a great-great-grandmother who was a full-blooded Native American medicine woman. So, and that's from just one side of the family. I actually have started to get stories from my mother's side of the family, which means I got a double dose, but I haven't had a chance to really verify those like I would like to. But my father's side of the family definitely, a lot of this stuff is, I found out those people were still alive for the most part, so I was hearing it from the horse's mouth. So a lot of it came very natural. And the one thing that I did when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and I was experimenting with things, I experimented with tarot a little bit, not a whole lot. But I dabbled in astrology, but mostly people would come to me and say, can you help me? Can you do this? Like a ghost clearing or a medical intuitive or stuff like this. You know, I've got this growth. Can you help me? I've got a house and it's haunted. Can you help me? And I literally simply would go, can I do this? And in my head, I'm talking to God. God, Goddess, Ally, Buddha, Great Spirit, Great Pumpkin. I don't really care what you call it. But I go, can I do this? And I would hear a yes. I'd say, do you want me to do this? Yes. Then I would do it. And it literally was that simple for me. Can I? Do you want me to? Because if you tell me I can and you tell me you want to, then I'm just going to have faith that everything I need to know is going to pop in my head. I will know what I need to know when I need to know it. And in fact, that's one of the lessons I teach in my book, Combing the Mirror, that's over there. Combing the Mirror and Other Steps in Your Spiritual Path. Psychic abilities, when you embrace them, work with them, and psychic is like a muscle. The more you work with it, the stronger it gets. When you embrace them and you get to a certain place, you just have to accept. And when you accept that you will know what you need to know when you need to know it, your life changes profoundly. We're going to take a quick break. Are there any questions from Periscope? Welcome, Periscope world.
No.
Okay, so you want to just wind that down and then just...
You go.
Hello and welcome back to Are You Psychic? Here at the Shaman Stream Gifts at the Fox Run Mall in Newington, New Hampshire. I'm Dr. Kevin, and you can find out more about me at mydrkevin.com, MYDRKEVIN, or my doctor you stop by here. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them on Periscope, and my Periscope goddess will pass your question on to me. So we left it off of, I will need to know whatever I need to know when I need to know it. Like I said, that's a chapter heading in one of my books, Combing the Mirror and Other Steps in Your Spiritual Path. The thing is that psychic abilities, and I had just said this as we were closing, psychic abilities are like a muscle. And the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Now, the thing is, if you just have wild, crazy, undeveloped, uncontrolled, misunderstood psychic abilities, then they could pop up and they could tell you the most inane thing that mean nothing and not tell you something that's really important to you because they pop up when they can get you.
Thanks for the hearts.
Sometimes when something really like drastic or something that brings up a lot of fear or a lot of anger or a lot of concern comes, we get so it's like, hey, buddy, I got the answer. Buddy, yo, ho, I got the answer over here. You, shh. I'm obsessing.
Got a question. They said, what do you focus on?
Well, if you're focused on the problem or the fear or the issue, then sometimes your psychic can't break through this block that you create, this barrier where you almost get blinders, like horse blinders on. Does that make sense? And so you get so focused on like, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive this, or how am I going to do it? And your psychic is sitting there going, door number 3. Let's make a deal. Open the door. I got an answer for you. So you really want to look at your psychic abilities as something that are there. Psychic abilities to a human are like instincts to an animal. They come naturally to us. There is a little test. Do you want to take the test to see if you're psychic? You want to? Okay. So out on Periscope, you can take this test as well. I want you to just close your eyes, sit comfortably, put your feet on the ground, relax, close your eyes, breathe in deeply through your nose, out through your mouth, breathe in deeply through your nose, out through your mouth. I want you to get very much into your body. I want you to actually see if you can feel your heartbeat. Feel your breath. Try to see if you can feel beyond your breath into your heartbeat. But at the very least, feel your breath. If you can feel your heartbeat, just like raise a hand for a minute and put it back down. Try to keep breathing and getting into a deep, centered place. You can feel the blood pulsing through you. Once you put your hand up, you can put it back down, but just see if you can feel it pulsing. Okay, if you can't get quite deep enough to feel the pulse of your heart and the flow of your blood, raise your hand if you can feel your breath. Feel your breath. Let's feel breath. Okay, good. So, you can open up your eyes. Okay. You felt your breath. Couldn't quite get to the heartbeat though, but you could feel your breath. You might want to practice. It's a really good deep meditation exercise to be able to feel your heartbeat and your flow. But you're both definitely breathing, so you're psychic. So, now, if you're breathing, you're psychic.
Someone just said they feel their heartbeat in their lips.
Oh, great. But if they felt their heartbeat, if they're breathing, they're psychic. Because psychic is that connection between us in our lower selves to that which we are connected in our higher self. I look at the psychic. Psychic is no more than the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. So we have conscious, unconscious, and subconscious. So our conscious is our computer. I'm seeing all of these things. I'm taking in 1 billion sensate things a minute. My brain is storing them in my subconscious, which is why I always love when you look at the Hercule Poirot's or the Miss Marples or the Sherlock Holmes or, now the modern NCISs or whatever. And there is this, like they'll start talking and they'll say, you just keep talking to them and they tell you something they saw that they didn't know they saw. Because their conscious brain didn't register it. Because the conscious brain has so much stuff coming into it, it can't register it all. It would basically shut down your memory processor. You'd be like, blue screen of death. So what you do is, but it's all registered in your subconscious. And your subconscious is where we put things down to process, to figure it out. It's that side of our computer that takes all of our experiences, what we've told that we've chosen to believe, and that's it. What we've chosen to believe. A lot of times, a lot of beliefs are choices. And there's a difference between believing and knowing. So you have knowledge and knowing, and you're in the psychic spiritual realm. You have belief and actions based on the belief, and that's in your computer realm. If you feed bad data into a computer, what do you get for an answer? The wrong one. The bad data might have been fed to you by your parents. It might have been fed to you by your school teachers. It might have been fed to you by older siblings or cousins. Might have been fed to you by the mean girl in class or the bully. But if you get bad data and you accept the data as true, then you end up having the wrong answer, making the wrong decisions, going in the wrong directions. The psychic doesn't care about the data. It doesn't care about the three-dimensional world that you've been taught. It doesn't care about the reality that you were told was real until you bust through it. You know, people sometimes will ask me about miracles. I'm like, miracles are happening all the time. You know, there's a miracle a minute. What is a miracle? A lot of times, a miracle is when you get rid of an incorrect belief system. To realize what's really possible. To be what's really possible instead of limited. So that's the conscious and the subconscious. The unconscious is that connection to that part of us which is a part of something larger. And again, I said earlier, I don't try to not to get into names. I use God. I use a non-gendered God. I use a non-religiously affiliated God. My God is an equal opportunity employer. Lives in all temples, all churches. Is not recognized in many of them. I'm only basing that on action. But my God is there all the time, everywhere. So when we talk about psychic ability, we're like, well, how do we access that information? I like to go back to one of the ways that I define this, because I believe it really helps with understanding psychic abilities in a way. So I look at everybody as your soul is a cell in the body of God. So you might be a cell in God's left pinky. You might be a cell in God's right earlobe. This one over there, he might be, a cell in God's, right eyebrow. Okay? I know that I'm a cell in God's right butt cheek because I'm such a pain in the butt that's got to be where I live. Okay? But by being a cell in God's pinky, you are God. Your pinky is you, right? That cell that's in your pinky is you. That cell that's, in your elbow or your eyebrow or wherever, it's you, but it's not all of you. Is your pinky all of you? Is your eyebrow all of you? Okay? No. But it is you. So we are divine, but we're not the whole divine. And the problem oftentimes is that when people come to a place where they say, hey, I'm God. Well, that's because, I'm Kevin. Now known as Dr. Kevin. I'm Dr. Kevin. But I am not all of the divine. And man consistently gets in trouble. And I'm going to touch on this much more next week, at next week's Fireside Chat. But man always gets in trouble when man decides, oh, I am divine, I'm God. Now I'm going to be everybody else's God. That's when the trouble begins. So from that, information, all that you have been created through your DNA, your cellular print, all of that is in your pinky. It's through all of you. So as the pinky, you can go and get information from any other part of your body if that pinky has the ability to process it. Now that pinky may not know what to do with it. It might not care that you ate beans for dinner and now you're feeling a little gaseous, but it has access to that information. I don't really care, I shouldn't say I don't care, but it isn't something that it makes a difference in my world that in a tangible way that I need to do something about it if somebody in the Ukraine has hiccups. Because somebody in my left calf has hiccups. And on a divine level, when I go through the unconscious, there's a part of me that could access that information. Oh, there's some hiccups going on over in the Ukraine. Oh, there's some in India. Oh, there's some over there too. But do I really want to know who's hiccuping at that moment in time and all across the world? Might be a little bit of overload. Maybe it's fun, I don't know. I've never tried. you can do that. So when you're talking about psychic abilities, you're talking about crossing that bridge from the conscious into the unconscious, where all that information lives. Now, what lives in there is enough to completely drive you insane and blow all of your mental pathways, and you would just be sitting in a corner going, yeah, and you wouldn't be making any sense at all. Because that front end of you, as a powerful a brain as it is, has its limitations. It's not going to be able to take in what is going on everywhere. Now, when it goes into the cells, because we are a cell that is traveling through a body of an internal God, well, what does that make our cell? Eternal, right? Last forever. Kind of like commercials in the Super Bowl. They last forever. No. So, as your soul lasts forever, as your cell, and that's what I call you, a cell in the body of God. That's what a soul is. That soul is going to last forever. Well, do you think an everlasting soul is going to have a single lifetime? And spend the rest of the millions of years just to like hanging out, watching the world go by? No. So when you go in there, you can access not only your pieces of information that might include, something that's happening with somebody else. It might be, somebody you care about is in trouble. You might get a flash about something. You might get some kind of knowledge, like when I do medical intuitive, of what's going on in somebody's body and what we need to do to adjust to fix it. All of these different things. You're also can access your past lives and other people's past lives, because all of that knowledge is in that cell. So in the psychic, you can go into that cell and you can see what somebody's past life is that may be affecting them now. That may be something they brought forward that they came to resolve in this lifetime, or that has created a block for them in this lifetime that they're here and they need to work on. So you can do that. Now the other thing is, the future is not in granite. But if I were to take...
What are you looking for?
Well, I just want something simple. If I'm going to take, and I'm going to toss this. Now, when I started that, it hadn't released. But I could have predicted, because I've thrown things at him before, that he was going to catch it. Sure, now
Keep her finish from the waist up.
It's something that was in motion. Now, could that future change? Well, A, he could have missed it. Made me look bad. I would have had to slap him around when you left. Okay. B, I could have not released it. And had him go, and then I could have laughed. Okay? So you can go in and understand that there are forces and energies and movement that lead to a particular future unfolding. But that future is not in granite. So when a psychic taps in to something that is in motion to happen because of a series of events, they are actually giving you information with which you can make better decisions. Because maybe if I suddenly got a flash that if I released this, I was throwing it, that it was going to go too hard, and Micah was going to try to catch it and fall against the window and go out the window and take all the necklaces down and break all that jewelry. And I mean, so he had a few broken bones. That doesn't make any difference. You're not trying to sell Micah. But I could have destroyed a lot of merchandise. And so I changed my action and I held on to it. Okay? And so a lot of times when people talk about psychic abilities, and again, psychic's like a muscle, the more you work with it, the stronger it gets, there are all kinds of different ways your psychic abilities can focus. It can focus on past lives. It can focus to peek behind the curtain. I do work with people all the time on what I call inner child work. Inner children are something that get created when there is an event that happens in your life and or a moment when you have accepted something as true that is not, that are traumatic. So, and one of my abilities is to go in and be able to kind of see, and I see them as children that are alive and well and making decisions in your life for you in certain areas. Because if something really traumatic happened, and in order for survival skills, because you do not have the emotional or mental capacity to deal with it as an 8-year-old, a little part of your 8-year-old goes off and tries to protect. Now, when something triggers that trauma, that set of events, suddenly that 8-year-old is in charge and running your life. Or that 12-year-old, or that 15-year-old. And so that's why, and so one of my abilities is to see and then actually get that child to come out so we can basically lay them to rest and let them go. So that whenever you have a situation where you feel like somebody hasn't been completely truthful to you, and that triggers an 11-year-old, that suddenly you start like acting an 11-year-old and you've walked out of jobs or you've broken up relationships or you've destroyed things that you really didn't want to destroy because you had a temper tantrum, and you go, I'm 45 years old and I just had a temper tantrum and broke my $1,000 TV screen and I can't afford to replace it. What was I thinking? Well, you weren't. There was an 11-year-old having a temper tantrum. And an 11-year-old doesn't think like that. So, but that's a very specific ability to go in and see those and understand those and to work with those and to go into dialogue with them, which involves abilities like sensory knowing as a type of psychic ability, telepathy, literally being able to talk into your brain beyond your conscious brain and bringing things up. Now that's very different than doing past life. It's very different than if you're a ghost magnet. And anytime you go someplace where there was a ghost, they come up and they're tapping you on the shoulder. Hey, I'm here. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Hey, you. I know you can feel me. All the rest of these, they all are, I don't know, they're drugged or something because they can't feel me, but I can see you feel me. And so, what are you going to do about it? Versus looking into somebody's body and saying, oh, something right here, and it's telling me this is going on, or that, and so these all are different ways that those psychic abilities come up. Sometimes people confuse psychic abilities, and this is one of the things I warn all of my students of. That, well, first of all, there are two things. Where are we time-wise on this one?
I have no idea. It doesn't tell me the time.
Okay. We're going to wrap down for a second and start a new one. And then we're going to go to things I like to tell all my students about their psychic abilities.